All right, welcome everybody. I'm so happy to see you for the next and today's Global Solidarity lecture. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our today's speaker, Sung Un Gang. Sung Un is a postdoctoral researcher at the Collaborative Research Center Refigurations of Spaces at the Technical University Berlin. And he works there on a project that's called Smart People, Queer Everyday Life in Digitalized Spaces. And in this project, he focuses on the space of Seoul in Korea. And I think today we will also hear a talk that is related to this project. Sung Un holds a doctoral degree in theater and media studies from the University of Cologne. And the topic of his PhD thesis, which also I think will appear as a book soon, if I'm not mistaken. The title of this thesis was or is The Making of Modern Subjects, Public Discourses about Korean Female Spectators in the Early 20th Century. So as you already might have guessed, the research foci of Sung Un are the cultural history of Korea, queer studies, urban culture, and post-colonial studies. His academic publications appear in international anthologies in English and in Korean language. And I want to just mention two of them. One from 2021 in English language is titled From Streets to Theaters, The Emergence of the Korean Entertainment Business in the Early 20th Century. And then another one that actually appeared in Korean, but of course I don't speak Korean, so I will read the English title. It's titled Corona, Experiences of Asian People, Problems of Racism in the that the Virus Has Revealed. One last thing that I want to mention that is very interesting about Sung Un's work, and again, something where he translates his academic knowledge into a very accessible forum that is the queer podcast, Queer Asian interview podcast, Am I Sweet Sour? In German, Bin ich süß sauer? And it's for a German speaking audience, and I'm really looking forward to listening to it. The title of today's talk is Queer Everyday Lives in Digitalized Spaces, and I hand over to you, Sung Un.
Hi everyone, and hi Katharina. Thank you so much for inviting me to this talk, and also thank you so much Luba for inviting me too. Also, thank you so much for John's efforts preparing this talk and organizing the PR. And I'm really happy and I'm honored to be able to present my ongoing project in front of you. And I heard that lots of you are scattered all over the globe, and it's really exciting that we are all together here in this small Zoom room today. I'll start with sharing my PowerPoint slide. And can you see that? All right. Yeah, so let's start. As introduced by Katharina, today's talk is titled We Are Everywhere, but Where Are We? I'll just start with a short anecdote from my fieldwork, 2022. And you are watching the street that I was passing by as I was making a voice recording on my way to an interview that I had on near this neighborhood. It's central northern part of Seoul. As you can see, there are lots of old-style houses, but also new buildings. And this neighborhood is widely popular among many Korean people and also tourists from other countries. I was staying there for about 3 weeks, and I was born and raised in Seoul, but I've been to Germany, to be specific, Cologne. for the last 12 years to pursue my study. And due to economic reasons, but also due to many other reasons, I wasn't in Korea very often. So for me, it was kind of new to be able to stay there for a longer time and also to do this research. What came to my mind was, and I quote myself, right now I'm walking and here is Gyeongbokgung Palace and Gwanghwamun, that neighborhood. It's Sunday and the weather is lovely. So there are lots of families with children. So in this context, I'm this context is so utterly ordinary, natural, and obvious. And I'm silently and smoothly passing by, sliding through it, and I'm not being a stumbling block. And this feels a bit suffocating. I feel that. Yes. So today, especially since I've been staying in Seoul for a long time and walking down the street, this comes to my mind a lot. Not being a hindrance to others so that they can move smoothly. This sense of keeping myself uh, secretly or not showing my identity, my lifestyle, not showing my values in Korea uh, became a bigger struggle than I could ever imagine. Because before I moved to Germany, I knew that I was gay, and I also had some gay and lesbian and also trans friends, but it was very private. And because I knew the dynamic and because I knew the custom of the country, so to speak, I thought that I can handle that. I can handle that situation way easier. But it turns out that, well, in the meantime, sorry.
Somebody
Okay, I think
forgot to mute themselves. It's all good.
okay. Yeah. But if you have any question, you can just also maybe use the chat room. In the meantime, maybe I just changed myself. Maybe I was got involved too many things in Germany, and maybe I was, yeah, finding myself again while I'm doing the field work. 2021, on the day of International Day Against LGBTQIA plus hate crime, South Korean NGOs and queer organizations too made public actions. You can see several queer activists standing in front of a culture center in the middle of Seoul, and they're holding these large banners telling that we are everywhere. Queer people are everywhere. Transgender people are everywhere. And this is the one of the most well-known slogans of queer rights movements, right? It's telling that, it's reminding people that even though you can't see us in everyday life, we do exist. So take consideration that be inclusive and think twice maybe before you say something which could be yeah, which could be hurtful to queer people. So this slogan, "We are everywhere," is such a powerful reminder for our existence in everywhere, all over the globe. But the longer I was staying in Seoul, the more I was questioning myself, where are we? And this became one of the most important questions that I keep coming back throughout my research project. And maybe it'll help you to to find an access to what I'm doing and what I'm going to um, introduce you today. So the questions arise. First, which spatial experiences have queer inhabitants of Seoul and Seoul metropolitan area made? Second, what space do queer people create in Seoul and SMA, so Seoul metropolitan area? And third, what is the role of digitalization in these processes? And fourth, what does it tell us about sexuality, gender, space, and society in Korean context? Today, I'm not going to answer all the questions. They are questions that I'm I keep coming back through my research, but I hope I can give you some hints of well, answers, or what I call preliminary findings. It's an ongoing project, so these are maybe the first observations or first results of the first analysis. So please tell me also your opinions and also your criticisms or your questions. So first preliminary finding is that that is for queer people in Korea, the home is a very important space. At the same time, it is very difficult for them to find one. A second finding is that the physical space and queer internet usage or queer internet are more tightly connected than I thought. Thirdly, well, I could also observe very complex relations between queer visibility, spatial conflict, and safety issues in Korea. Let me guide you through my research and also what my interviewees told me, which led me to find this, well, hypothesis. So today we are going to, well, I'm going to give you an input about queer rights situation in South Korea, firstly. And secondly, I'll just give you an overview of our research project, Smart People, Queer Everyday Life in Digitalized Spaces. And thirdly, well, we'll dive deeper into the preliminary findings. And lastly, I'll introduce you what I'm going to do with all that. Queer rights situations in South Korea. So especially during the COVID pandemics, I heard from a lot of people that they discovered or they rediscovered South Korea through mostly K-pop or K-drama. And I'm pretty sure that some of you also came across with some of the music videos on YouTube or TikTok videos or also a Netflix series such as Squid Game. Because of the very colorful and also very um, how to say, powerful pictures and images you can get to see on Korean music videos, and also especially how male performers present themselves. I got to hear a lot of questions that, is it true that South Korea is so open to queer people? Are Korean men more queer than other other part of the countries? I think there isn't any easy answer. And certainly there are some aspects of Korean culture which is queer, in some point even more queer than other parts of the um, world. But at the same time, I want to focus on what queer people are struggling with currently in South Korea. So this is the context. First, the living and spatial conditions, which is very important to our project, um, are characterized by heteronormative city planning and housing politics, which means that South Korea has about 50 million people living in there, and there are less and less people getting married and giving birth to children. Last year, there was the statistics, government statistics that less than 0.778 children are getting born in a marriage in Korea, and the situation is going even more serious. So the government is very severely focusing on the housing policy towards um, increasing increase the birth rate. And this policy is very deeply rooted in the heterosexual, heteronormative family model, which means that in Korea, only heterosexual couples can get married officially, and only they have a right to adopt children. And also only they enjoy governmental but also private support from bank or from family to rent a house or to rent an apartment or to buy one, which is very important especially in Seoul. At the same time, my research team, Martina Löw and Jörg Stollmann, were in Korea before I was hired, and they figured out that while there were lots of high-rise apartment buildings and lots of many different forms of living, one thing that they missed was a visibility of queer people. At the same time, we know that the queer movement has become an important civil rights movement since the 1990s through the internet. All in all, our research team finds that there is a high potential spatial conflict in South Korea around and among queer people's living situation. Now you're seeing a picture of LGBTQIA plus activists and their allies about the very recent decision by Korean Constitutional Court, which decided to continue the criminalization of homosexual soldiers in Korean army, and also to punish the people with HIV to spread the HIV. So criminalization laws. In a larger context, as I just said, Constitutional Court just decided to uphold Military Criminal Act, Article 92, Section 6, which was used against gay men, especially in Korean military. The context is that there is compulsory military service in Korea. So most people who are identified or who are registered as men in Korea have to go to military service once in their life. I did that too. So there isn't any law that criminalize homosexuality or queer living. But once you enter the military service, you can get punished for that. And there have been cases where gay soldiers were tricked into answer certain dating app messages, or even forced to have homosexual sexual relationships under the disguise that, well, if you can prove yourself to be gay, you can be released from this military service. But what really happened was that was just a trick to find out who's gay in this military camp and to get them prisoned. Also, a very important case is from the last year that City of Seoul granted Seoul Plaza, so very big and important symbolic place right in front of the City Hall, for anti-queer Christian festival during the Pride Week in June, while Seoul Queer Cultural Festival has lawfully and properly made a request to use this plaza during this very week. Last but not least, also very important case, also tragic one, is that Korean Army forcefully discharged the late Sergeant Byun Hee-soo after her gender-affirming surgery 2021. And she was the first openly trans soldier in South Korean military history. And this development has been closely observed, and also many suggestions have been made in Korea, but also from the international society. I introduced you just 3 cases. United Nations Human Rights Council suggested last year or noted that, and I quote, that it remains concerned by the absence of comprehensive anti-discrimination legislation in South Korea, and I quote. And this is because especially of the article regarding queer people's lives in Korea. Secondly, Amnesty International also notes that LGBTQIA plus individuals in South Korea, and I quote, continue to face legal, social, and economic barriers, end quote. 4 years ago, UNHRC also sent special commissioner to Korea, especially to investigate about their living situation. And I quote, various forms of discrimination include a series of discriminatory laws and practices that make it difficult for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons to enjoy their right to housing. End of quote. So that's the starting point. And what I'm doing, or what my team is doing, starts from this building in Berlin, near the zoo. My research project, Smart People, Cure Everyday Life in Digitalized Spaces, is a part of the collaborative research center titled Refiguration of Spaces. This is an interdisciplinary research consortium, consists of sociology, urban studies, anthropology, media studies, and etc. My project leads are Martina Löw and Jörg Stollmann. So Martina is a sociologist and Jörg is an architect. And you can find out more about our project using this QR code. My research project is situated in the context of sociology of space, queer studies, queer geography, post-colonial historiography, and urban anthropology. Very important for me is how to, well, in academia, people say that how to gain data, but I think it's more than just collecting data. It's about making connections with people and also um, not only just extracting from their lived experiences and their life stories, but also be in connection, be in contact, and also in the end, not in the end, but to be able to give something back. But maybe I'll ask you the question by the end of the presentation once again. Our research project is based on one assumption that is shared by all the other projects. About there are 15 or 16 ongoing projects in our consortium. And I quote, our hypothesis is that the current social changes, conflicts, and anxieties have to do with how the relation of human beings to spaces, how the spatial structuration of social practice is negotiated. This idea is linked to the assumption that from these changes and conflicts, a common pattern emerges, which we call the refiguration of spaces. End of quote. So what we are trying to do is we are used to explain what happens in the world from economic perspective. For instance, there are inflation, there is a free economic zone, free trade zone, or from political terms such as democratization or colonization. What we are trying to do is find a spatial terminology or spatial perspective to understand how the world changes. While drawing upon this shared hypothesis, but also drawing upon other research contexts, I made some decisions how to design our research project. And for me, it was very important that these three points. The first one being expanding the scope of the research from nightlife to everyday spaces. The context is that, well, there are researchers doing valuable works on queer people's life in Korea, mostly and very interestingly in the field of counseling. While there hasn't been any comprehensive study of queer people and especially their relation to spaces, if any, most of them are focused on nightlife districts, so-called. And these spaces are really important because, as I could also experience, it's one of the few possibilities where you can just be yourself in Korea. But at the same time, I'm also queer. I sort of outside these bars, and also other people do have other um, spaces in their lives, and those spaces haven't been discussed a lot yet. So this is the first thing that I wanted to do. And second thing was taking individual life trajectories as a referential frame of analysis. Um, this has also something to do with the third thing that I'm um, caring about, which is intersectionality. It is very hard to find people to take part in this kind of research project because it requires them to trust me and also be in contact with me, sharing their life stories, and well, it requires quite also emotional investment from their side. So I couldn't design the research in a way that I could say that, okay, I need 20 people, and well, 5 of them being cisgender lesbian women, 5 of them cisgender gay men, five of them transgender people, five of them non-binary people. I couldn't do that. So it was all the more important to look at each individual's life trajectories and to understand why they have such understanding and such relation to specific spaces, and how can we understand it deeper by considering their positionality from intersectional perspective. Practically, I've been in well, data collection, quote unquote, since July 2022, and I'll go to Korea in several weeks for the last time. So I've been doing the literature survey, doing the field work, doing interviews, and also my interviewees provide me with their personal accounts in form of diaries. I could find interviewees through referrals and also through snowball method, and also personal inquiries via social media such as Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So far, me and another student have been conducting 39 interviews with 24 queer inhabitants from Seoul and around. And I say not queer Koreans, but queer inhabitants, because it was also for me very important to have people who are migrated from other countries. That doesn't make any big group in overall interviewees, among over interviewees, but I'm very happy to have at least 2 people coming from other countries. In general, each interviewees gave me one oral history interview in the beginning, and then they kept diaries about their everyday life, and then with a focus on spaces. And based on these diaries, I did this second interview, which was a semi-structured interview. And all this process was based on informed consent. And here is a brief overview of my interviewees. For your information, all of the names are changed so that they don't experience any discriminations based on yeah, participation in this project. I can't go through all of them, but maybe you can see that the youngest one being in their early 20s, and the oldest participant was at the time of the interview 59 years old. But the biggest group is represented by the people in their 20s and 30s. And also the biggest group by pronouns would be people using she and her pronouns. Also, what I didn't plan because I couldn't plan anything, but what was for me very lucky was that people who are cisgender and who aren't homosexual also took part in this project. So let me present to you some of the preliminary findings. On your monitor, maybe you can also see the picture that I took in Seoul, December 2022, from a bookstore in a Mapogu. Mapogu is southwest part of the Seoul, which is widely popular due to a vibrant indie music scene several years ago. And now it's more like shopping area, youth culture, lots of publishing houses, and also lots of lesbian bars and spaces. And it was one of the few spaces where I can actually see the rainbow flag outside. And coming from Cologne, which is very proud city and where you can find abundance of rainbow everywhere, I was so happy to find this place and to get to know more about this neighborhood. I could maybe summarize the preliminary findings up to 3 points today. Oh, I told you about this earlier. So importance of home and relation between physical space and pure internet usage and complex relations between pure visibility, spatial conflict, and safety. Firstly, lots of interviewees told me, or it became a recurring topic, how important home is for them. At the same time, how difficult it is to find one. Um, I asked interviewees a question, what does queer space mean to you? And do you have any example of queer space? And I kept this term open. I didn't give any hints. It should be a physical space or it should be internet space, but I just kept it open. And very often people answer the question with home or their room. Having said that, lots of my interviewees, having been have been living in Mapubu, the neighborhood that I mentioned, it is a favored but also gentrified living area for queer individuals. And because of the ongoing gentrifications for longer than 10 years, the rent is getting more and more expensive. So lots of queer people are now or have been migrating from Mapugu to other neighboring areas and cities, which is widely uncharted. Here you are looking at a kitchen and also living room of a queer housing project where I also lived together 3 weeks last year. It was an interview with a bisexual cisgender person. It was about queer space. I asked, when we say queer space, what do you mean by that? What comes to your mind when you hear queer space? And she answered, and I quote, queer space, just just what vaguely comes to my mind is just, so for example, a space where I hang rainbow flag and put things related to queer on the wall. My room in such condition, like that's the only thing that comes across my mind right now. For many queer people, having this feeling of or possibility of expressing themselves as a queer person was very important, but it was not a granted situation because lots of them were living with roommates or family members because of the very high, not only this Mapo area, but overall rent in Seoul. So they have to share a room with people who don't know anything about their sexual orientation or gender identity. And in some cases, people who are living with their partners and have their pictures and rainbow flags all over their apartment have to remove them very quickly when they receive visits. I had an interview or talk conversation with two queer feminist activists named Bob and Ciel of queer feminist group Gol. And they told me about their observations of this uncharted migration from Mapugu to other areas. And I quote, Bob told me, and I quote, yeah, there's a change. They're all going to certain area of Seoul. It's like a mass migration. Everyone's going to this district. I don't know why it's weird. Why do people form such strange groups? Everyone is working in different places, so why would someone who used to live in Mapogu go to other district together? It's a little bit like a lemming, the animal, or migrating always in a group. We just all go to certain area together in a weird way. And then CL, who by themselves moved from this Mapugu district from other neighborhood, told that, and I quote, basically, there's definitely something on this neighborhood, Mapo, that's going up in rent or something. And then people are going to move out one by one, more and more out of town. But if the person who went to the outskirts of the city found a place, it's my friend's case, but they're like, you should come here, move here, and so on. Well, that's part of why I moved to the other district too. So maybe there are also lots of undocumented or uncharted similar cases, but I kept hearing very similar stories. The one person moved to other district and found a place to live in, and then they felt safe enough, and then they actively um, suggested other people to move to the neighborhood. Here, this is one of the typical panoramic view over the city of Seoul with lots of high-rise buildings, but also lots of hills. This is a quote from a diary that a cisgender lesbian person provided me with. She also used to live in this very popular area, but she moved to outside of other city right next to Seoul because she wanted to live together with her girlfriend. And I quote, in our old neighborhood, we often felt like we could hug outside. But I think we were very awkward until a while after we moved in to the new apartment. Even when we were waiting for the elevator, we didn't talk to each other. And I think we deliberately walked a little farther apart on the street than usual. I wondered how we could be considered natural sisters. That's the way how their neighbors assume their relationship. So they just come by as sisters, although they are lovers. If the neighbor became suspicious and posted something on the apartment community app, so this is also a very important topic. These high-rise apartments buildings often have their own apartment community apps, and there you can easily find rumors about other neighbors or concerns about their living situations. And someone makes a comment like, I've seen two women walking around arm in arm, will be rumored to be the lesbian couple in the flat number XY of building number ABC in no time. I live in a big apartment complex, but at the same time, no one knows what kind of family we are. But we have to consciously hide it. And it can be dangerous if found out. So we live in this neighborhood with conscious non-interaction. Because the more we interact, the more lies we have to tell. I don't think there is a neighborhood in Korea where I don't have to lie like that, unless I change countries. This is a view from my room in the queer housing project from last year. I had a focus group interview with some of the inhabitants a year before or a month before, and they told me interesting stories. They longed for a queer home, and they, well, decided to build their own or to make their own home project. One of the queer participant and inhabitant told me that, and I quote, once we asked each other, are we really queer? And I quote, the context is that ever since they are living together under one roof, they told me that they don't have the urge to go out to maybe lesbian bars or gay bars or to other meetings because they don't have to or they feel seen. They feel um, not conflicted in the way that your gender identity and sexual orientation is questioned. So to the degree that they sometimes, well, in their words, they forget that they are queer, living in this queer housing project. The second person told me, and I quote, well, that was all in the beginning. Back then, some activists wanted to do too many things, end of quote. So the person told me that in the beginning, the housing project tried to be also kind of hub for queer people living in the whole neighborhood. They did a lot of invitations and also events, but um, they were finding balance between activism and living. They were still in this process. Also very important, also interesting for me was to hear that we often say that in this house you can't have any romance. So one of the questions that I want to solve through further research, my guess is that not only the noise situation, but also you can easily know who is coming to their house, although they have all separated flats, sharing sometimes the flat, but they have their own rooms, but still, yeah, they feel awkward to bring someone. Secondly, physical space and pure internet usage. So the starting assumption of our project was that internet has such an influence on queer people's life, and it is all connecting all across the borders, and people can easily approach all the information and meet people very easily. But it very quickly turned out that, at least in Korean speaking internet, it is far from being open and all connected. Rather, queer Korean internet is based on filtering and highly coded languages. Secondly, also on internet, visibility and invisibility are carefully managed and practiced to remain safe. Also very interesting finding was that I asked people, so when you use your dating app, where do you use that? And without exception, most of them just told me that, well, at home, not in the bus, not in subway, not in the workplace, never, but always at home. So it means that although they have the possibility to find someone on the internet and to talk to everyone, where they are physically at is very important. For instance, a lesbian community app. I quote from a diary by a cisgender lesbian person. During the interview, Zoe, the app for lesbians, came up and I installed it again after a long time. After I got home, I verified myself for the first stage via cell phone, which was not difficult. As a second stage of verification, you had to upload a photo of your ID and personal handwriting, which was too troublesome for me, so I did not continue it. So these kind of security measurements are really important because not only lesbian women, but women in general in South Korea are in danger of discriminated against, also physically. So many or most um, interviewees that I met share the stories of getting worried about getting outed as a lesbian woman, but also as a woman being in public. A very representative is also how queer venues show themselves differently. This is I just put them all on mosaic because I didn't want to share too many informations. But while gay bars and gay clubs are very open and they post everything publicly so that you can easily find out where is this bar and which event is going to take place. Lesbian bars are all kept under the private mode, and you can't find out, you can't understand that this is about a lesbian bar or lesbian club. Um, but you just have to know that. Um, Also, another filtering is that you have to follow them and you have to send them messages so that the people who are running these accounts and running these venues can look into your timeline to be sure that you are a lesbian woman. I also experimented with a gay dating app called Jack D. Um, and it was my first time using the dating app because yeah, I was on the dating market way before there was mobile internet. So yeah, what is also very interesting is that so far as so far I could know or figure out, this dating app or gay dating app have this location-based character, which means that as you can see, when you're at a certain place, you can easily find people in your neighborhood near 10 meters of radius or 50 meters, while such function is not offered by lesbian dating app, as far as I could figure out from my interviewees. And this is from my field note. And I quote, as I finally had a moment to look into my smartphone, the Jack the app showed me a grid full of male faces and bodies. Quickly, I looked into the first 5, 6 profiles that belonged to people surrounding me. To my surprise, the first 3 of them were within a 10 meters radius. My heart raced. That many. The context is that I couldn't, well, yeah, I couldn't maybe understand the code of being queer or being gay in Korea. So visibly, I couldn't meet anyone queer outside of gay bar. But as soon as I installed this dating app, as soon as I turned on this app, it showed me that on a busy morning, the week, there were 3 gay people around me, subway station. So in the shortest time, the app changed my perception completely and literally showed to me we are everywhere. But if there are so many, can't we dare a little more? The third finding was about queer visibility, spatial conflict, and safety. Um, what came arise was that my interviewees made various or very different experiences of placelessness based on their gender, economic status, family status, violence experience, and so on. And these factors are influencing the sense of placelessness intersectionally. Overall, my interviewees shared a strong yearning for queer public space, but at the same time, lots of them showed hesitance about sharing themselves. And this is a cafe where I also did an interview with a bisexual interviewee, but the story is from someone else. And it showed me very clearly that the places, but also the right to stay at a place in Seoul and Seoul metropolitan area has been severely commercialized so that they have to pay to stay. And as a young lesbian woman who was studying and who didn't have much money from family background, she was going through a very difficult time to find a place to be with her girlfriend. I quote, and it's like, the city is a place where you have to pay to be together all the time. But we were such a poor couple, and outside we felt uncomfortable like that. She referred to an encounter with homophobic people during a date. Or it was hard to hold hands or anything like that. So we always had to be inside somehow, and that it cost too much money. I remember a lot of times it was really hard for us when we went out as we were younger. Like to be able to express our love by hiding somewhere. I think there were some moments where we were really sad about that. Well, this is me during my exchange student time in Germany. Some people who are able to have this chance go abroad. But also here, women, the female interviewees told me that their initial motivation had very much to do with their being as women in South Korean society, which is specifically about private and social control and violence. A person told me, and I quote, "I think I got the idea of taking language courses abroad because I couldn't do what I wanted to do in our hometown." I mean, many, well, not most, but many girls in Korean society, girls from conservative families, want to get out of their house. And because living just renting an apartment was not an option for her, she needed a reason to move out from her family house. And the best reason for her was going on a language course abroad. Another interviewee told me that she was in a heterosexual relationship, but then it was a very abusive one. So she chose to go abroad and study there again to, and I quote, have a safe breakup or 안전 이별. Other interviewees also shared stories of conflicts in the family and also at school. For instance, an interview partner of mine, shared the stories of choosing study abroad to leave her family business because she was helping her family out, but it got so much of work. And for her also one of the one of few options to quit the family business to be independent was going abroad. Another non-binary trans person told me, and I quote, "I was in a state where it was difficult to survive in Korea, so they chose to leave Korea." While most of the interviews took place in cafe or more private settings, such as in their apartments or a rented office where only two of us were there, some other interviewees chose knowingly public spaces to give an interview to me. And sorry, you can maybe guess this is just a space between a staircase and an elevator of a sports center in Seoul. And my interview partner suggests meeting or continuing our interview here, where lots of people are just passing by, and some staff member came out and asked what we were doing actually. After that, I asked her why she chose this site, and she told me, "I don't have a fear or anything like that of getting into an argument or a problem in a public place or with a stranger. It doesn't really matter to me who hears me because I'm a queer person, I'm a sexual person, and I have no shame about that at all. So I don't think it really matters who hears me and what they think. And I don't think it is going to affect my life in a big way. Or it doesn't matter if it does, because to me, it's kind of a campaign about how it's important in life. In life. Probably that's why I didn't feel uncomfortable there. Or I didn't feel like it's a space where I can't talk about what I want to talk about. But it should be also noted that she spent more than 10 years of her life abroad. And she also later told me that this kind of confidence grew over the years that she spent abroad. Now we're watching the scene from the Seoul Queer Culture Festival, which took place in Seoul Plaza in July 2022. Well, as I told you, the project is ongoing. So I'm not able to present you the final or big theory or final result, but these are things that I'm going to do. And yeah, maybe we can stay in touch. Firstly, I'm going to wrap up data collection with expert interviews such as conveners of Pure Space, but also bar owners and yeah, other people who are making spaces for queer people. Um, and secondly, based on the stories and also other texts and data that I collected, I'm going to, of course, write and publish. As I told you in the beginning, a big topic or question to me is how to keep in touch with interviewees, more than 20 people to now. And also importantly, how to contribute to the community. And I'll really appreciate your inputs, your um, examples, or your ideas. Thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing the preliminary results of your ongoing research with us. It's really very interesting, and I'm sure there are already a lot of questions. I saw that there are questions in the chat. I don't know, Tatiana, for example, has a question. Do you want to say the question or should I read it?
Yeah, I can say my questions for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, but first of all, yeah, thank you for this presentation. It was yeah, super interesting and very well done and very beautifully. I like the how you worked here on the visuals of presenting the information so much. And yeah, a lot of things definitely resonate with Russia. A lot of facts that made me really angry because it, you know, the right situation, unfortunately, is like leaves much to be desired, as we can say. Yeah, and also it made me think about a project that a friend of mine is doing. So he's made a couple of excursions here in Russia, in Moscow and in St. Petersburg, through queer spaces, but not just through queer spaces of today, but through queer spaces of the past. So you can listen to the audio guide and you can go through the locations. So yeah, but no, I'm just very, very curious. I think I'm going to go to your website and check out more information for sure. And if I ever visit Seoul, I'll know where to refer to. But yeah, the question I had was about the language. The language that you used when asking the questions, because, for example, one of your questions was what comes to mind when you think of a queer space? And I wonder if there is like a special term in the Korean language for that, or if you had to use the English or maybe some, I don't know, some version of English that was adapted to Korean. So, and yeah, like the formulation of questions, how did you manage to formulate them? Whether you ever felt like that you lacked the language to speak about certain things. So yeah, the process of the interview that interests me the most.
Thank you so much for your input, and also I try to read your comments, but I'm kind of handling it. There's a camera going on also, so maybe I'll read it in later. But thank you so much for sharing your insight, and also thank you so much for your question. Probably also many of you are studying linguistics, or you're doing research in linguistics. So I'm really excited to hear your opinion about that, because for us it was also a challenge to find the right term. And in in this project, the project design was already done before I joined the team. So the funding was already going on, and I joined the team later. So to have the possibility of comparing different notions or different stories, we had to hold on to the specific term that was used in the project application for the funding, which was queer space. And from Korean perspective, queer space translated into Korean word of queer 공간. So maybe you can hear that. Queer is queer, so it is well, you can translate that, but also lots of people use that just as queer. So I took that because that's the closest to what we had in our other documents. Then space is very abstract, right? It's very open concept. So it was important to find the equivalent concept, and that was 공간, which is space, but it could be physical space. It could be also abstract something. Yeah. So in that case, I'm using this queer 공간, and I admit that also people tell me that, well, it sounds kind of you mean, and then people just make suggestions sometimes. So you mean like bars? Do you mean what do you mean? And there I have to remain calm, and I just say that, well, you give me examples. I'm not saying you what is queer space, but I want to know what you think about the queer space. Um, the queer 공간 is not very usual term. It's not everyday term, but it does have the benefit of being a slightly uncertain, unpossessed term, because people can then project their ideas onto it. Yeah.
Can I ask a question that's maybe related to this question about the language? I mean, first of all, I think it also speaks very much to the demands of research funding or research funders, and the question of translatability. And I did recently I finished a project on queer ways of living in the post-Soviet worlds in different spaces. And we also always had this question about, like, how do you translate your English terminology into the ideas of other languages, right? But that's just a side note. What I wanted to know was, you mentioned many times that, especially for women, it's not only the problem of homophobia that concerns lesbian couples, for example, or people who are identified as lesbians, but it's also the fact that there is violence against, or a violent discourse against women in general, or that they're not safe in the streets. And I was wondering, like, could you say a little bit more about that? Is it more connected to the roles that women are not self-confident or feel safe in that way, or is it really that there is also a lot of harassment on the streets? Or yeah, I have a hard time of really grasping like what the situation could be. So I would appreciate if you could say a little bit more to that. And then one last question that I had about this app that you mentioned, for gay men. I was wondering, like, can it be abused easily? I mean, if you have this tool where you can spot every queer or gay person right in the vicinity, like, isn't it like super dangerous? Yeah, I don't know, just my ideas, but maybe you want to answer some.
Thank you so much for your very intriguing questions. Maybe I'll go back to the first question about translatability in the end, but the second question about living situation of Korean women. I mean, Korea has many conflicting or many self-conflicting aspects today, because Korea is one of the economically most successful countries in the world. And Korean women are one of the, well, or in Korea, women have higher achievement in academia. And at the same time, the discriminations against them is so deeply rooted and also so widespread. And my concern is that it's even getting worse, despite or due to, not in quote unquote, due to feminist or getting feminist movement, which is getting stronger and stronger in Korea. In Korea, people speak about feminist backlash since 2016, because 2016 it was just a year. I was a year into my PhD project, and as I started my project about female spectators in Korean theaters, the early 20th century, well, feminism or women's history was considered mostly a topic of yesterday, because Korea have over 100 years of feminist activism and also feminist scholarship. And also in the 90s and also early 2000s, there were lots of movements and lots of progress made in this society. So as I started, was kind of, I also felt that, well, I'm a bit behind the time because doing this kind of topic, but I thought it was important one, but I was interested in too, so I did it anyway. But a year into the project, there was a tragic case that happened near Gangnam Station. Maybe Gangnam is a name that you maybe can know from this, yeah, size Gangnam Style, a viral hit from 2012. The southern part of Han River, which is crossing the city. Gangnam is a very vibrant area, entertainment district, lots of businesses, lots of young people. And there was the case that a man hid into the public toilet of a building, which was for all guests. So there was not typically women or man toilet, but just one toilet of this floor. And he waited until a random woman entered this toilet. He let about 10 other men just pass. But as a woman entered the toilet, he killed her. And but the Korean police and Korean prosecutors didn't regard it as a hate crime against women. And it ignited a debate and also movement of young generation of feminist women in Korea. And you can maybe also easily find lots of cases about molka or hidden spy cam, which became a really huge problem. So no one in Korea can be really sure about if they are now filmed in public toilet or in changing room, especially when you're a woman. And there's a very brave journalists, also two women, who investigated and also who figured out the whole network of making films, selling them online, also oppressing the victims to make more videos and making money out of the whole system. But there was not really serious consecution following that. So being women in South Korea is for maybe unouted lesbian women in Korea an even bigger challenge. And that's why also all these online services are kept secret. Having said that, lots of lesbian women or non-male queer people were flabbergasted also about how open queer gay men in Korea can date. And also in the beginning, there were cases that people just abuse this app to figure out who's gay nearby. But over the year, well, it turned out to be quite safe in a way. Maybe the people lost interest, but also you don't find people's faces that easily. I just put my face on that because I wanted to talk to people, and that's the easiest way to get a reaction. But most of the profiles were just you see people's, I don't know, silhouette or part of their body. So they do have mechanisms to keep themselves safe, but it is true that they have relatively bigger freedom. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thank you for the explanation. Yeah, do we have other questions from the audience? Yes, Luba.
Yeah, thank you so much for for this very interesting and sometimes heartbreaking stories and life stories. And my question was maybe related to the first question about the names and about the funding. And I feel like, and I wanted your opinion on that. I feel that sometimes when we talk about academia or European-based academia, sometimes the relationship between the subject, so to say, of the study and the person studying is the subject-object relationship. And what I feel in your explanation is that maybe even colonial aspect of it, so that it is also important in your research that the respondees feel safe and what happens with them in time, and they can also define the name of the project. So the input on what queer spaces is also very important to you as a researcher, so to say. So I feel that maybe this is a shift that we desperately need in the point of queer people telling the stories of queer people in academia themselves, though of course there are limits and of course there are funding that is very limiting, but still I think there was previously maybe a lot of examples when people had to put aside their the heritage be a little bit, I don't know, the experience was brought as to we here, European academia, we want to know about your awful experience in your native land, and then you had to use the English language or other forms of language to describe your experience that cannot be easily described with this sort of language. And maybe is there still this shift? In order to be able to research these things, you have to put aside some parts of your identity, be that your country of origin, your language, your queer identity, some parts of your queer identity, or we are seeing a shift in that we can say that we are, I don't know, from Russia and queer, and what it means for us. It's not what is defined by the academic sources, but it is what we define ourselves. Or do you think there are still a lot of problems in a way that these spaces are still treated as subjects and there is no possibility in academia to be more inclusive in that sort of way? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Luba. And also, again, thank you so much inviting me. And also thank you so much for your questions. I think you are also bringing back the issue translatability that Katharina mentioned before, which I forgot to answer. Part of it is, I do agree with you. It is, I have the impression that I don't not only, well, let me start again. I'm not only dealing with the field or stories that I gratefully get to learn in Korea, but also the process after that. What happens with that back in Germany? And I'm very aware of my positionality of being a cisgender male, living and have the privilege of attending university abroad, doing degrees, and also even now earning my money through this academic work. There has been actually ongoing discuss about decolonizing Korean studies since a year or 2 years, because Korean studies has been widely funded, and also it was a part of Cold War, America's Cold War knowledge production system. So for English-speaking, mostly American universities, Korean studies Korea was important geopolitical part of their Cold War, right? So being placed between China, North Korea, and Japan, Korea just became liberated from colonial rule of Japan and after the end of the Second World War, and there wasn't similar kinds of work done about colonial history, colonial legacy, for instance, in Germany with Korean colonial history. But before that even could take place, Korea had to politically and diplomatically collaborate with Japan for the bigger structure of Cold War, for the interest of one part of the Cold War. So it is really complex. When I go to Korea, maybe I was naive to believe that I can understand the language. I'm gay man by myself, and I look like this, like most of the people who are living and working in Korea. So maybe I can just merge into the scene. That was my first thought, but it turned out to be very naive thought. On the very first night of my field work, I went to a gay bar, and I took place and I spoke to the bartender and later also the bar owner. But at some point, the bar owner asked me, "So where are you from?" And this question that I get to that I have to answer again and again in Germany. And because I was in my hometown, I thought I'm safe from this question. But he easily figured out that I'm different, I'm weird in his eyes. And later I figured out that, well, in Seoul gay bar, you don't talk to strangers. You just sit there. When you go there alone, you spend the night alone. You just look at your smartphone, but you're not talking to randomly bartender and bar owner. So I just outed myself as someone who spent lots of time abroad. And I opened my intention, and I opened also all about myself. It was also thinking that I had, maybe I should conceal the fact that I'm gay, because to have this distance as a researcher, right? But I very quickly realized that, well, without revealing yourself, you can't get any access to the scene, the community. And also, it's only fair that when they trust you enough to share their stories, why do you have to conceal yourself, right? So doing the field work, one thing that I assure everyone is that they can tell their stories the way they want to, and they can also break the interview or just cancel their interview anytime they want to, because at least they have to have this kind of control. And also, if they want, if there is certain part that they don't want to share, they can tell me later. Then I'm not going to publish or use it at all. I just actively delete them everything, because it's not my intention to reveal or make their life transparent, to reveal everything open, which is also the concept of visibility and also coming out, and which I also used, unfortunately, in this presentation, is also very kind of Western concept, right? The queer life can only take place when once you are out and proud. I get to learn that there are lots of different forms of life, which is not less proud, which is not less valuable. Yeah, but thank you so much for your reminder. And also finding terms and setting terms, specific terms, is important. And in that case, queer is it's not, how do you say that? It's a foreign term, but it's not a foreign language anymore in Korea. Yeah.
Can I just briefly say thank you for your inquisitive and nuanced answer, such I don't know. I know that in NYI we have a lot of this thoughtful discussion, but sometimes in academia I was faced with people who say they know all the answers. It is such a like fresh air to hear such a nuanced response, and to know that so much thought is put into it. And yes, I'm happy that there are queer people studying queer people, and thank you so much for your kind words.
Thank you so much for the chance that you gave to me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are officially out of time, but I would think we can have 5 more minutes. I do have a question, but I want to give the floor also to the audience. Are there any other questions that you want to discuss? Maybe while people are thinking, I ask my question, if you don't mind. So I would want to come back to your question, actually, that you posed, saying like, what can I give back to the community? I think that's a question that I always have when I do ethnographic work. And that is really difficult to answer because you said yourself, like academia is a system that is not necessarily accessible to anybody, to everybody, right? And that has certain rules. And once you submitted a term, you cannot easily change it or things like that, right? So my question would be like, how in your bigger project, did you talk about that with your colleagues, or do you have any strategies how to circumvent or even subvert the academic system and make the data that you collect also available to the people that you are actually researching with? And I'm not saying on, but that you engage with, because very often, you know, we publish our results and we store our data in really inaccessible form, and yeah, sometimes we cannot choose, right? But is there a way, like, have you found ways? I'm really interested because I'm also always trying to find ways how to, you know, navigate this. Maybe you can say a little bit about.
Thank you, and I'm really happy to hear that you are also making thoughts about this question. I came to think about it more seriously coming back to the first night of fieldwork after I have this more or less conflict with the bar owner who was very, very annoyed by me asking questions. Because I'm not a good drinker, and he also told me that, what are you doing here? You just have drunk only one bottle of beer and asked me tons of questions. And I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm coming back tomorrow. I'll drink more. He told me that, well, drink now. And also he told me that why he was so angry about me because he's one of the visible also activist, to be honest, and also bar owner. So he had a lots of journalists and also lots of researchers coming to his venue and asking questions. And literally, he told me that they were so poorly prepared, and then they ask weird questions, and then just get away with that. And he never get to experience what happened with all the streets he gave them. That is the first part. And the second part was that he has been doing this work for over 20 years, and he doesn't see any big change in Korean political system, especially about anti-discrimination law. So he was on the night, to be very honest, because I went there more than 10 or 12 dozen times. On the night, he was very pessimistic and very annoyed. And I asked him that, well, okay, I understand you. So what can I do? So what do you wish? What do you want to happen? And I think it was that question that made him also understand that I'm not going to extract data from him. He told me that, well, academic work brings nothing. It was very painful to hear that because this is my job. Because I believe that academic work can make changes, but he was firmly decided that academic work doesn't make any change, but it should be happening in journalism. So if there is foreign journalists who are coming to Korea and make a good researched coverage of what is going on in Korea, that would make some changes. That's one anecdote, but individually and systematically, I'm thinking about ways to giving back. The first, individually, because they entrust me their life stories and lots of details and lots of texts, even more than I could even dream of. And I think it's because the whole interviews are taking place under those conditions that they have the decision what and how to be published, what part of their interviews or text to be published. And everything should be pseudonymized, should be under a pseudonym, and they shouldn't be easily trackable. And also, this data should be used only for the project. But by the end of the project, I'm going to we have now transcriptions of interviews. We have like text that they wrote for me. I make photos. I'm going to it's just an individual action by myself, but I'm going to print them out and bind them and just turn them back in material form and then they have the control over what they're going to do with that. They can go to publisher, they can just burn that all, or they can just keep it secret in their drawer. It's their decision. I also do hope that we could find a way to share all the data that I collected, because I also don't come across such kind of stories easily. But at the same time, I know that this story could be only told in that way because they entrusted me them under this condition. So when I return the texts, I'll ask them, do you want to publish them? Do you want to get them or share also in European law, you also have to inform your interviewees that they have the right to be forgotten, right? And by now, the measurement that we are taking is we are going to keep all the data up to 10 years, but anonymized, and also following the European data protection law, so that people cannot figure out who is this person. And only in the case when a committee or a reviewer have suspicion that this is not based on empirical data, only the person can have the access to this specific data, but not more. That's the basic condition of our project now. But with the agreement of individual participants, maybe there could be one or other data which could be shared, but it's upon their decision.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. It's very interesting. Yeah, is there a final question by anybody or final comment?
Well, maybe just a final comment. I'm not very academic, so I'm just going to put it out there in my very naive way. But I do think that just documenting the situation the way it is for now is quite enough that you are doing for the community, because well, it is a historical document that's going to exist, and for the future generations, it would be something to rely on. In the same way that we discussed how it's interesting nowadays to read something about the queer history of the USSR for us here, it would be interesting for somebody in the future to dive into your research and to know that there are some people that were there, that were existing, that were trying to create their own spaces and to make the city their own. And so, yeah, I think that's already a very big step. And sometimes we underestimate the power of information and the storage of the information.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I also had this one similar idea, to be honest, to have this narrated map and going through the city, and I was really happy to hear that. There are some individual projects in Germany, at least, because I studied and I researched Korean culture history. I started also seeing things differently, also what I'm doing, and I really do hope our future generation can easily access queer history of Korea, because that wasn't the case as I was growing up. So for me, it was such a moment as I first met a lesbian woman, Korean woman, who migrated to Germany as a nurse, who is now over 70. And these nurses are national heroines in Korean history. They are the ones who sacrifice themselves to rescue the poor country. That's the narrative. But then I ran into a lesbian nurse who came to Germany and who married another nurse. And it showed me that also other queer people do have place in Korea, place in Korean history, which hasn't been told yet. So I do really hope that that something will change, and also, yeah, my study can also contribute to that, but also more than that, yeah.
Yeah, Luba, last words.
Yes, sir. I just wanted also to say about like last comments, no questions, but the researching and the describing the community is, I would say, very important, not only for queer community in Korea, but I would say for any queer person, it is very valuable to know that there are queer people everywhere, and the struggles that they face. I mean, coloniality and queer identity and violence against women is similar. It's heartbreaking, but still, it is very valid for many. And I think that maybe we cannot estimate now what result would be in the future. For example, there was a project Queering the Map, which was locating people on places and telling the queer stories. People could tell them themselves. And nowadays, I think I cannot underestimate the importance when you can go to any location and know that there are queer people there. And also when there was violence, like when there were deaths in Palestinian community and there was the narration, there are no queer people there. This map showed as a valid examples that no, there are people there. So we cannot really estimate it now. This is the one thing that I wanted to say and say I'm very grateful for your work. And the second thing, I think for like people in migration, people in between spaces, this is also very valuable because this interconnection of never feeling at home because of your queer identity, because of your in-between space identity is also very valid. And the third point I wanted to tell that I'm not a researcher in the ethnographic sense, but I work with decolonial movements, and I would say that building trust is really important. So I think your approach of being very gentle in your approach and showing value that you can bring back into community, maybe it builds this very important trust. And I know by fact that you do more than you say in terms of giving back, because you bring people to the conferences, and this is very nice to see. And yeah, thank you so much for your important work. Sorry for speaking too much.
No, thank you so much, Riba, again. And also, just last word by myself. I was shocked to hear that from the bar owner, to be very honest. But I didn't lose my trust and my belief in academia or more education or doing this kind of work, because on the surface or in the short term, we're not politicians, we're not movie directors. We don't change the world over the night, but we do change, or we can form how people think and how people think about themselves, or think about the others, think about the world. And I think that's the importance of our work, and I still believe in that. So, but thank you so much.
Thank you. I also strongly believe in that. And again, thank you so much for your presentation, for sharing your work with us. Thanks everybody for your comments and questions. And please do show up tomorrow for our last Global Solidarity lecture. Yeah, and wherever you are, have a good night or a good day. See you tomorrow.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Thank you for attending the talk. Bye bye.